Hey everybody, I'm Vasel, and welcome to my weekly review of a board game app. But today, we're going to take a look at something slightly different because normally the app I take a look at will have a board game equivalent. This one does not. This one is Slay the Spire. A lot of people told me to try this one out. This is a deck building game similar to Dominion or Thunderstone, a game where you build a deck of cards and you will use it as you progress through the game. Slay the Spire does not have a board game, so I don't have a rating for the original game. And in fact, I don't think it could even be made into a board game because your cards in this game change as the game goes by. In this game, you start with 4 different fighters. There are 4 different style fighters that you can be. You will progress through a series where you are going through to literally slay a spire. You will go through, you'll fight monsters, you'll stop at campsites and buy equipment and artifacts. You'll buy more cards for your deck. Each of these 4 fighters is very, very different. One of them is a straight-up fighter. They go in and they attack with cards that do a lot of fighting and damage. One of them is a thief, does some backstabbing and poison. One of them has these orbs that circle around them that do various damage in different ways. And one of them is jumps from state to state, from calm to enraged, back and forth, and you have to know how to deal with that. You'll come across enemies. You'll fight these enemies, almost like a Final Fantasy style game. The enemies will come. You'll see what the enemies are going to do. There's not any randomness therein. The only randomness in the game are the different enemies you'll come across, the cards as you draw them from your deck. I mean, there's a decent amount of randomness in the game, but you see what the enemy is going to do, so you have to decide what cards you'll spend each turn. You have a certain number of energy to spend. Cards cost energy to use. You have to decide whether you're going to block, attack, or what have you. For ease of use, the game walks you in carefully. It does not give you access to all 4 heroes right away. It gives you access to 1. So maybe it could have been better overall, but I would say it's a 4 out of 5 for sure. For ease of use, just going in, having played deck building games and Final Fantasy games, it was very easy for me to jump in and play it. Graphics, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. The game is fine. Here's what I'll say about the graphics. They at least went with something different. It's not your typical orc and goblins and stuff like that. It is kind of funky and weird. And the animation of the enemies attacking you and you attacking them, I get that they went for minimalistic in this game as opposed to cool graphics. I just think you might have had a better feel there. And for Pizzaz, I'm not going to give it any points for Pizzaz in this regard. I'm going to come back, though. This is sounding negative, but I don't mean it to be. It's just this app didn't have any, it has a decent soundtrack and special effects, and there's a lot of things. But this is not an app that if I saw it, I'd go, wow, I want to play that app. The AI, 5 out of 5, just because it runs so smoothly. I haven't had a problem with this game yet. You are essentially not playing against another player. You're playing against the game, but the game does a good job keeping track of you. You can play against other people. The game does give you custom challenges that you can do, and you can go through those daily challenge to see if you score better than other players. For problems with the game, I've run into none with one major exception. There's one major exception, problem to this game, and that is the sheer addiction that I felt with this game that I haven't felt with any other app in a really long time. I've played Slay the Spire more than all the other board game apps I've played almost combined. It is that much fun. It is a solo game only. I'll play with solo. It doesn't replace the physical game because there's no game to replace. And my final rating for this game is actually a 10 out of 10. But let me explain a little bit why here. Slay the Spire, each of the 4 characters has a really distinctive use. as you go through this game, you start with a very basic deck of cards. In fact, every character starts with pretty much the same deck of cards. All 4 different fighters. You just have a slightly different special ability, but you have different color cards, and there's also a colorless card. As you go through to the different merchants, and after you fight different enemies, you will be able to add these cards to your deck. Adding cards to your deck is not always a good idea. You will also get potions that you'll be able to use, one-time use potions, and knowing when to use stuff and when to fight is a really neat thing. But what I love about the game is every battle you get stronger. Now, so do the enemies, but you can pull off some amazing combos. When you pull off this immensely neat poison combo or a barrage from a ton of orbs. And I love how all 4 fighters, like if I play this game, I'll sit there and go, man, I'll play with any of these 4. I'm happy to play with any of the 4 because they all have a very distinct feeling. And in fact, once you play through them all, the game will give you an idea, a way to make custom games. And so you can make the game harder, easier. You can play with a fighter who's a mix of all 4 different cards. There's so much variety in this game, and there's so much replayability. And like I said, I've been playing this over and over and over again. Now, the game is not easy. You go through, you're going to die the first time through. I think that feels pretty accurate. You might make it all the way through, but you're probably going to die. And that is what it is, right? You just go back and you try again, but you will learn and you will get better. It is not impossible by any means. I've gone through and beaten it several times now. But each time I get more things, and each time I'm like, ooh, I learned something new. I'm going to get better at this and that. And if you get bored, there's those daily challenges or the custom games, and there's so much involved with this. So this goes to prove that while I love shiny graphics and that pizzazz, it doesn't always have to be in a game. At the end of the day, it's gameplay that trumps everything. And in this case, that is true. Slay the Spire, like I said, the biggest problem is I'm addicted to playing it all the time, but I really love this game. It does things that a physical game doesn't do because you can upgrade and change your cards. There are cards that get better over the adventure. Every time you use it, the card gets better or worse. There are cards that can get stuck in your deck temporarily or cards that get stuck in your deck permanently. There's a lot going on, but the computer keeps track of all of it. It never feels overwhelming. The enemies get harder and harder. They have different unique feels to the point where an enemy shows up and I'm like, ooh, I know what this enemy is going to do. And then there's seemingly unlimited artifacts. There's not, because I think I've seen them all now. But there's a lot of different artifacts that all give you special cool abilities. And so every game of this feels fresh and interesting. If you've not played Slay the Spire, I highly recommend it. A ton of fun. It takes deck builders to a different level. The way I feel Clank took deck builders, Slay the Spire takes a deck builder and does it in different ways in electronic form. So there you go. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time.
You